Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unheated podcast by Thea Ventures. We're an early stage climate tech fund based out of India, and today we're excited to have Raj Tilwa with us from Focal, here to share his story and his background and motivation for building Focal. So, thank you so much, Raj, for joining us today.
Thanks, Priya. So excited to be here, in your space and excited to, talk to you about all that we've been up to, how we came with what we've been doing, and yeah, just excited to have a really lively conversation.
Wonderful. Super. So I'll just start by giving a little bit of an intro on the company and on Raj's background. So Focal is a company that has reimagined outdoor heaters, making them more efficient and climate friendly. Their all-electric outdoor heating solutions are designed for restaurants and hospitality venues using smart sensing and directional heat to warm people rather than entire spaces. This approach has simplified operations and it elevates guest comfort with unparalleled energy efficiency. The company was co-founded by Raj Tilwa and Rohan Pandya in the US, who have been friends since childhood. They started Focal to address the environmental and operational challenges posed by traditional propane heaters, which were especially highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic when outdoor dining became essential. And a little bit of background on Raj. So before founding Focal in 2021, he spent about 4 years at Deloitte Consulting, and he's also a World Economic Forum Global Shaper. Raj has a bachelor's degree from Emory University in economics and biology, and a master's of public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, and an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business. So welcome back, welcome here again, Raj, and looking forward to diving deeper into the business model and some of the ways in which why you started the company. So perhaps we can just jump into the first question just to kick us off. Is perhaps you can give us a quick overview of Focal and the problem that you're solving, and what was the sort of the initial insight that led you and Rohan to start the company, and how does the business model work?
Yeah, no, sounds good, Priya. The founding insight, so Rohan and I, we've known each other for 20 plus years. We both grew up in India. We met in elementary school, and we went to high school in Singapore and came to the States in 2012. And before we came to the States, both India and Singapore, we grew up in some level of resource constraints, right? So in India, growing up, only our parents' bedrooms had an air conditioning unit. And we remember it from the earliest days, dragging mattresses into our parents' bedrooms in the summer months for air conditioning. And the rest of the spaces had no air conditioning and even heating. We grew up in Gujarat, so we did have a couple months of cold. And, in those months, we would use space heaters for the most part for temporary heating solutions. And when we went to Singapore, it was less around energy equipment and more around, right, it's a island nation, land, food. It relies a lot on, external partners from all the consumption that takes place in Singapore. So we did a lot of work around how do we reduce food consumption, focusing on things like Meatless Mondays and, those types of events. And when we came to the States, it was the first time we found ourselves in complete abundance. You know, there's any space or building we walked into, you could just assume that there's heating, cooling, comfort, and people never have to think about, what they need to be comfortable in these spaces. But, with our climate hats on, we just could not get rid of the fact that, hey, these buildings are on all the time. And we're living in a world where we need to reduce our energy intensity in whatever space we're in, whatever we're doing. How are we actually going to get there? And we also started having these conversations with folks, and people would still complain that they're too hot, too cold in these spaces. And that also demonstrated to us that even though we're using these blunt tools to provide comfort to people, people are still not getting the right level of experience that they're looking for. So there was something really broken about the user experience. So we just started thinking a lot about operational carbon, right? Buildings contribute to 40% of emissions globally. And we just started thinking about, hey, like what could we be doing from that standpoint? And we took a first principled approach of, hey, if the purpose of these heating, cooling, comfort systems in these buildings is to provide comfort to people, what is the most energy efficient way in which we can provide targeted comfort to people and actually give them the agency to communicate to the systems that, hey, this is what I'm really looking for. So that's how we started working on Focal in the early days. And, we started with this comfort problem and we started thinking a lot about, hey, people spend time in all kinds of spaces, right? You're being heated and cooled in homes. You're being heated and cooled, in your workspace, be it in the office or a warehouse or a factory floor. And also when you're in these restaurants, hospitality settings, um, as well. And we're like, hey, this is a problem that's everywhere. Where do we start first? What exactly do we want to solve, first? And we were really drawn to B2B applications where, there was not only where we could reduce the energy intensity of these existing systems, but also where we could focus on the end user experience and the guest experience and build something that also provides very differentiated value. Um, and hospitality as a industry, as a segment, was very attractive for us because of that as well. So that's how we started. I mean, we remember walking onto construction sites wearing hard hats on, trying to talk to folks who are working there. We did similar customer discovery in the first year of company building, both Rohan and I, to just really build that conviction. And it's been the last couple of years where we've been laser focused on outdoor hospitality as a customer segment, and have been working with restaurant owners and operators, hotel property managers, and ski resort executives to think about, hey, how we can help provide operational efficiency, cost savings, labor savings, at the same time really focusing on delivering that unmatched user experience, unmatched customer experience. So that's what I've been focused on. And Priya, I know you also asked about business model as well. We are a software powered heating system, the first of its kind, that does provide this directional heating that provides an ability for folks to communicate what their preference is and receive that ideal comfort level that they're looking for. And we use our systems as a way to not only replace these existing systems, right? So we can meet the customer where they are in terms of how they want to purchase our heating system. Businesses that are like love capital projects, we give them a hybrid pricing model where they pay upfront for our heating system and then we charge an ongoing SaaS fee for our software layer. And for businesses that don't have that capital availability and see their heating infrastructure as an operating expense, for them we're charging a no upfront hardware and ongoing heating as a service. And we're actually seeing great uptake on both of our pricing models up until this point. And we'll learn a lot more as we officially commercially launch later this year and are working with a lot more customers. So really excited to get to greater business model clarity as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that really great overview of the business and your initial sort of starting point and your personal experiences also that led you to developing this idea. So tell us a little bit about what it was like starting this company while you were still in your master's program. Because I remember we met when you were still doing your MBA at Stanford, and this idea was sort of incubating, and you were also part of the Harvard iLabs program as well. So how did that university environment help you to basically formulate this idea and then take it forward to becoming a commercial business?
Yeah, Priya, thank you for that question. And it's something that Rohan and I have been reflecting on in the last couple years, more specifically. And being part of these institutions and having the badge of being a student honestly gave us a lot of flexibility to approach anyone and have some of these early customer discovery conversations as students of the world or students of this particular solution or problem that we wanted to address. And when we approached potential customers or potential partners in the early days as students and as folks taking deep curiosity into the lived experience of our potential customers, we found it very surprising to understand that not often does someone actually go to a business owner or an operator and ask them about, hey, what are the problems that you're experiencing? And if you had a magic wand, what would you do about it, right? Doing that level of discovery, folks were actually so excited to talk to us. And having being part of these institutions, also gave us access to then, hey, these are the insights that we're collecting. I remember in the early days, we had mentors at the Harvard iLab, who, we would do all this, information gathering, and then we'll go to them and have this conversation that, hey, Phil, this is, what we learned. What do you think? And I remember some of the earliest pushbacks that we received was, Raj, it's great that you're getting all these insights, but you need to actually get them to give you a purchase order or get them committed, to a pilot, because sales-based learning is actually, when someone is putting some real skin in the game, and then you can actually feel that, hey, there is some early validation. Even when we went through our first accelerator program that we went through, which was Venture Bridge, which is part of Carnegie Mellon University, and Rohan was a CMU alum. So we went through that program, and I remember that's when we first inculcated, what we now, jokingly talk about as a culture that we have at the company, but it's around this mentality of deploy or die, where, especially we just saw so many hardware product companies that, have this really great product vision that just feels so intuitive. I remember in the first public pitch competition that I did at Stanford in the fall of 2022, I started that pitch competition with two questions. The first question was, hey, has anyone, ever, been at a place and they were too hot or too cold? A lot of people raise their hands. And then I told people to put their hands down. And then the second question was, have you ever shared the same space with someone else and then you had to argue about the thermostat difference? And, another hand went up. And, the product vision, and between those two questions, everyone had raised their hand at some point, right? So what we were building had strong resonance with people. But in the early days, how do you get past building something that people are excited about and then actually giving them that hardware, software, beta product, right? Or first version of a product that they can play with, give you feedback, really build that conviction, even as a team, that, hey, do you want to dedicate more resources to this? And having that, first year or 2 years where we were still in school and we had all of this differentiated exposure where we could continue to iterate and have access to networks where we could build early conviction into what we're doing was deeply helpful for us.
No, that's great. That's a great endorsement also for university labs and accelerated programs who are, looking to build the next generation of climate entrepreneurs. And I think having, as you said, that enabling environment and the belief and conviction behind people encouraging you to go for a particular milestone and test it out, get those sort of tick marks before you go out into the actual kind of in a way dog eat dog sort of more competitive space is really valuable. So thanks
Yeah.
for sharing
And
that.
Priya, I think one other point that I want to touch on as well, when as a first time founder, you just don't know so many things. And being a part of, university education system where entrepreneurship is a focus, and we were lucky to be at institutions where that was truly a focus, it also helped us de-risk because we had the time to cast a wide net, right? And be like, oh, there's a problem in all these different markets. you could build all these different versions of product and what could a product roadmap look like. We had all the conviction in the first year itself. And then it also gives you a lot of agency to then chase whichever market or whichever product configuration that people are willing to pay for today. And that honestly was a great testament to being part of these institutions, and having academic programs that put you through that rigor to validate at scale, validate broadly.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also the fact that you probably had a lot of other classmates that were also starting companies around the same time. In fact, we had Krish Mehta here just a couple of episodes ago to share his experience as well of building Phoenix Materials. And I know he was part of your cohort as well at Stanford. So great to know that you had similar minds working on interesting companies and ideas within the climate tech space. And curious to know also, as you think of the future and the next phase of scale up for Focal, you mentioned that you'll be looking at more commercial deployments towards the end of this year. What's your vision in terms of the regions that you'll be expanding to, the types of customers that you'll be scaling to, how you'll be growing your team? I know this is a bit of a loaded question with so many future kind of forecasting plans, but curious to understand how you'll be planning this now for the next few months.
Yeah, it's a privilege to graduate from some of your existing problems that you have as an early stage company. Hey, is there a really willingness to pay for what you're doing? Or can you actually build a product and have it operate, in the field for consecutive months? We have answered those questions, and that has given us early revenue, not that significant, but actually, something that we can be really proud of. And that has given us, this luxury to answer the question that you asked us, Priya, right? Hey, what is this year looking like? And, as you really get ready to launch and, lock in a version of a product that you're going to make, a few thousand of, and, securing that demand, and then actually putting that product out there at paying customers to then start testing organic growth and really building this conviction that, hey, do we have product market fit? So that is the big question that we're chasing this year. We've locked in our first our version of the product. We're going to launch our new website, so you'll be able to see our latest product very soon. And our plan is to be very focused from a geography standpoint. We're based in the Bay Area in California. And all of our early customers up until this point have also been in the Bay Area. And we're going to double down on that because for a hardware, software enabled product, we want to make sure that we can get all of the kinks sorted out, with the first 20 to 30 deployments. So we're going to be very laser focused in the Bay Area. We already have customers that can, fulfill our, first deployment plan. So that's a great position to be in. But then, very quickly, we want to start looking at geographic expansion as well. So by the end of the year, we hope to be in 2 more geographies, and we're still figuring out and prioritizing which of those would be, but we're seeing early interest in New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and we're also starting to see very specific interest from ski resorts in Colorado and Tahoe, because ski resorts also have a strong motivation because, the world is warming and that impacts the ski season, and they're very laser focused on their operational carbon as well. So very strong early signs in terms of, diversified geographic interest for what we're doing. But we want to be very measured in how we expand geographically. And this also is an approach that we've taken even from a team standpoint as well. Rohan and I are arguably the most frugal founders that you will ever meet as well. And that's because we also want to make sure that we are spending in the areas that are the big risk areas, for a company at any given point of our trajectory. And, right now, the biggest focus area is getting our product operations, manufacturing, supply chain, ready for our launch. And the only, JD that we've posted recently has been an operations program lead. And that's what we're hiring for. And today we have our hardware lead, we have our robotic systems architect, in place, and so we are firing on all cylinders. And then later in the second half of the year, we're expecting to bring on marketing and sales teammates as well.
Great. So very busy year for you ahead then, over the next few months. And, curious to understand because you mentioned ski resorts and the sort of other consumer spaces that you'd be looking at launching into. Could you help us understand, that the word AI is sort of buzzing now in our ecosystem. How does that feature into your product, in terms of real-time adjustments, multiple people with different heating preferences are in close proximity, and how does it detect occupancy, in different areas? Would love to understand how that works in your product and how it's helping you achieve product market fit.
Yeah, Priya, that's a great question. One of the first things that we learned, we knew no restaurant owners, operators at all. The first time we engaged with them, was over a 3-week stint in San Francisco in the summer of 2022. And, we just went up and down these two popular restaurant streets, just talking to folks. And one of the biggest things that we learned was that, they're extremely cumbersome. Existing heaters, propane heaters, right? The ones that you see, with a propane tank at the bottom and a mushroom top, up the top. And those are extremely cumbersome to operate. People have to, turn them on and off all the time. They have to, be moved around as well, and you need to replace propane tanks. So the hassle to operate these systems was the biggest pain point that we kept hearing over and over again. And when we started thinking about, okay, yes, electrification will definitely in itself take away many of the operational burden that you experience with a very analog, cumbersome system. Yet at the same time, what is going to drive customer love? What is going to drive this, usage and ongoing usage of our systems? And one thing that we started learning was that this, having a system or a way in which, the staff can deliver this guest experience of, adjusting seat level preferences and delivering that wow of a user experience to the patrons, right? So I think that was one. And then how do you remember their preferences? How do you take in ambient conditions as well, right? Like, is it getting colder, over the course of an evening? And then how does that, get fed into our system that automatically adjusts the amount of heat that is being delivered? So some of these, the data that we're collecting and the sensors that we have put in place to really optimize this real-time heat delivery is something that is core to our tech stack. And, we are collecting multivariate data around wind speed, radiant intensity, temperature, and how is this evolving at a very location specific level. So each business has its own, data model that we're creating in terms of how they want to optimize their heating experience in that space itself. The other thing that's really important, for a robotic system is, with edge compute, you can do so much without actually relying on, cloud as well. And cloud oftentimes, drives costs pretty high, especially for robotic systems. So we've built an architecture from the ground up that is optimized, not only for cost, but it's also optimized for efficiency. And one of the reasons why, we're able to do a lot of this local compute is also, running our custom optimization algorithms to know, which heating node should be heating which person to what level. So all of this is being, run and powered by, learning algorithms, optimization algorithms that will only get better over time. And, that's where we think a lot about, how does AI get implemented into our tech stack, and how does that actually provide differentiated value that results in high utilization of our system. And we're seeing some very positive early signs for adoption and increased interest in other features that we could add over time that can provide even more operational efficiencies to our customers.
Great. And as you think about, the climatic impact of your work, right? And I'm assuming that you have investors that want to actually see the tangible impact, through your energy efficiency systems. What kind of are some of the main metrics that you would measure or provide to them that could tangibly show the amount of carbon emissions that are displaced or the amount of energy that's been saved by using your systems as opposed to the propane heaters?
Yeah, Priya, that's such a good question. We, we're of course building this company because we're very passionate about mitigating emissions and actually doing our part in fighting climate change. And our investors, similarly, we have many investors at the table who also fundamentally believe in the same thing. At the same time, you need to provide no-brainer economic value to your customers. And, when we have our customer conversations, that's what we're laser focused on, which is around energy savings and actually demonstrably showcasing that compared to whatever they might be using, we can provide energy savings. So that has been the most important metric that we think about. And then that of course trickles down into, based on the type of grid that you're on, that results in different profiles in terms of emissions saved, like CO2 emissions saved. And that is something that we also compute from ESG reporting, for both also for our business, but then also for our investors as well. So just to give you some real numbers as well, compared to propane heaters, we are 20% of the cost to operate. Compared to natural gas heaters, we're a third of the cost to operate. And then compared to electric heaters, we are, depending on the power of the electric heater, we're anywhere from a third to a half of the cost of operating those heating systems. So every step of the way, we're able to provide that, savings. And, from a carbon emission standpoint, compared to propane heaters are 21x times, more emissive than what we're building. So there's no-brainer emissions reduction that we provide, but we are always laser focused on real dollar savings that we can point to based on how our systems are being utilized out in the field for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important metric as we're thinking about, cost efficiency and the adoption metric as well, because you want more people to be able to adopt the system. Regardless, obviously, carbon emission displacement is super important, but it's really going to be led by the price and, the ability and willingness to pay for something. And eventually, as all these new energy systems become much more widespread, it'll actually become so much cheaper to be able to adopt them than to go with the traditional fuel, kerosene, diesel, status quo. So it's great that you're already sort of ticking the boxes there. And curious, as we have just a couple more questions that I wanted to ask you today. One of them was really about your journey on the capital raising front. So, of course, one of the main pieces of starting a company is obviously to plan out and have a business objective, plan, team, and execution, but also to have the raw material of capital available to be able to scale and basically fulfill all the things that you're looking to in terms of your milestones, etc. So I was curious how your journey has been in raising capital, especially for the space where you've seen some sort of changes, I suppose, in the US over the last couple of months and the way that climate tech has been perceived. But I'm just interested to know, what kind of capital has been easily accessible and what you would say as a learning, potentially to other founders that are looking to start in the space.
Yeah, Priya, that's a good question. And I'll also preface this by saying, as a first-time founder, I'm a single data point, and I hope that folks who are listening are having many conversations and contextualizing a lot of this information for the kind of business that they're building, the kind of industry that they're in, and what are the activities that you want to fund from that capital that you're raising. There are a couple of things that are the things that we've learned over time. One was having a really solid technology vision and really capturing on inflection points, right, that will actually propel your business significantly. And that was something that resonated very strongly, not only with climate investors, but broader technology first investors, where we're building a real technological moat. And for us, when we went out to raise our pre-seed a couple of years ago, that was a very strong motion for us. When we're having some of our early conversations, right? We're a robotics company, that is, building low-cost hardware. That was another important point as well, right? Because hardware is something that many investors are a little bit afraid of. But by virtue of building low-cost hardware that can be scaled pretty easily using existing manufacturing processes, gave us a lot of bonus points as well for taking on a hard problem and trying to make it simpler and easier. And the third thing, honestly, was the team. Rohan and we've known each other for a very long time. Rohan, he's an engineer, was at Tesla and Zoox, working at the intersection of electrification and mobility and autonomy. And then he went to Carnegie Mellon to get his master's in robotics. And, myself, very complimentary to Rohan, social sciences, not, economics, management consulting, public policy. So having that team and our team history was also really important, that we were able to raise our pre-seed in 2023, start to finish within a 6-week window, which was something that we were deeply surprised by. And what we've seen we're going through a raise process right now. We'll be closing very soon, and what we've learned is that as you mature and as you're then looking at metrics around bringing on the right logos, demonstrating customer traction, figuring out your go-to-market motion, the thing that helped us a lot was that we had this deploy or die attitude and mentality, where we had spent so much time working with customers. We had data of our product being out in the field for multiple months in an ongoing fashion, and having paid customers, that investors were drawn to our team's ability to execute. At the same time, we were able to draw into the round customers as investors, or potential customers as investors, and which is not the same thing as strategic investors, right? We didn't have a big restaurant group that is leading the round or putting in a big check, but we had folks who have spent a lot of time working in this sector, in this industry, who got very excited about what we're doing, and that honestly has helped catalyze this round that we're about to close. So I would say there's differentiated capital that's out there that's perfect for your business and for what you need to prove out in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. And we were able to focus in on that. And there's always serendipity involved as well, right time, right person. And I would say the combination of all of that, resulted in, us having traction in the last few months.
Great. No, I think it's a great testament to your hard work and dedication, and of course your complementary skill sets and pedigree that got you so much success so far. And great to hear about the learnings as well from pre-seed round to today. And thank you for sharing those sort of words of inspiration for our the founders who are listening to this podcast as well. I'm sure many of them will be really excited to hear about the path that you've taken and draw a lot of courage and strength from it, because entrepreneurship can be a very challenging and grit oriented and resilient journey for people who are looking to get into it. So yeah, I think that's all we had on the cards for discussion today. I think really appreciate your time, Raj, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with us. I think maybe some final words. I don't know if you have anything to share with some of our Indian audience, because I know you're obviously originally from India, building in the US. Any sort of thoughts for the founders who are building here in India in climate? So as you know, we as Thea Ventures invest across the climate horizontal. So from energy generation to batteries to EV to circular economy to carbon removal, industrial decarbonization, agri and biotech. So across the board. And I know you led a India study trip not too long ago for students from Stanford to come over to India and witness some of these solutions. But would love to hear your thoughts of how you think India is positioned on the global stage in terms of leading the climate tech revolution in the global south, and any interesting kind of trends that you can see and vision from the US that you're witnessing of perception of Indian climate tech.
But yeah, thanks for this question. And I was going to end with that. Definitely. I had the distinct privilege to plan a global study trip through the Grad School of Business at Stanford, where we, spent a week in India, 30 of us from Stanford, including faculty, and had the distinct honor to, engage with folks like Priya in panel conversations, other folks who are building in India for India. We spent a lot of time engaging in dialogue with government leaders across, city, local level to the state level, and also folks, working with the federal government. And the thing that was, there were two takeaways that I had, from that trip more broadly. One, in terms of just building in India and what that can mean for the world, not only for India. Was I was in awe with all the founders that we spent with, how they were so laser focused on the fundamentals of building a sound business. Unit economics were front and mind for everyone. Cost and affordability was also front and center for these founders as well, which is not something that we see a lot of, here in Silicon Valley, especially at the earliest of stages. It's relatively easier for, folks to raise capital with, just a pitch deck. Even I don't know about that. We had a working prototype, when we first, went out to raise. But in India, you just have a much higher burden of proof, and founders are just able to consistently meet those expectations and honestly exceed those expectations. And I was deeply inspired seeing that. And I really do believe that if you can build in India, you can build a business that has global resonance and can have global impact. And the issues that India is facing, from climate mitigation, resiliency, adaptation standpoint, those are globally relevant issues as well. So I was just really moved. And the second thing that was a big takeaway for me was also that India has such incredible talent that's available, locally, folks who actually want to work in these, impact industries. It used to be, very much so driven by, sort of larger, multinational corporations, and, those were sought after jobs. But, that's no longer the only, means. And, folks are actually looking for more and more impact first careers. And I think that is also something that I was really motivated and inspired to see. And Rohan and I, we're from India, and we also want to bring our technology to India in some shape or form. And we have the privilege of also having folks on our cap table who have built businesses across India and the US. Momentum VC, they also invest across the India US corridor. They're an investor. So we are going to be looking very closely at India, and thinking about as and when is the right opportunity for us to also do our part in improving not only livelihoods, but also actually having the climate impact that we want to have in India as well.
Fantastic. No, we look forward to having you here and hopefully collaborating with you in some way when you launch in India. And thank you for the kind words. I think it definitely is a very exciting market to be placed in. Lots and lots of talent, as you said, great talent moving back from the US or Europe, moving to India to start businesses. And we're super fortunate to be able to invest in a few of these through our portfolio as well. But thank you so much for your time today, Raj. This has been a really exciting and enriching conversation. So we look forward to continuing this and hopefully having you back at some point. And all the best with the build out of Focal and your current raise and the next few milestones that you have lined up. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Priya. Thanks all.
Thank you.